the American dream is not necessarily the rags to riches story, but just the story of infinite possibilities, of there being no ceiling, no cap to what can be achieved. And I think that that remains. And I have to say that I'm immensely proud over the last 20 to 30 years, the Nigerian and the Ghanaian and the African community in the United States, our image has shifted from fraudsters, from dishonest people, and now people talk about the successful African professionals, the successful Nigerian doctors, the successful Nigerian African journalists, lawyers, people in the IT sector, the nurses, lab attendants, the truck drivers, and those in the armed forces of the United States. And I'm immensely proud of that because I think that they do show that American dream of infinite possibilities is still there and it's still possible.
Hi, welcome to the channel. Today's guest is Hakeem Belo-Osagie. Hakeem is a leading business figure and investor in Africa. He's the former chairman of Etisalat and United Bank for Africa. Hakeem is also the founder of FSDH, Nigeria's first securities trading company. Currently, he's the chairman of Metis Capital Partners, his single family office, and he's a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School. He also sits on the board of so many prestigious institutions from Stanford to Yale to NYU to so many others. This is a really special episode and I know you're going to enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you. I want to start at the beginning of your journey. Your father was the first doctor in your hometown. And then at the age of 3, your family relocated to England, came back to Nigeria again. You yourself attended King's College, UWC in Wales. You did politics, philosophy, and economics at Oxford. So moving around these different environments, what was that like? And how did those experiences shape you for the rest of your life?
The first conscious thoughts that I think I had was in England, actually, and it was with my parents there and with a lady who was my foster mother, because my parents were both studying, and my father was already a doctor. He wanted to be a specialist gynecologist. My mom was a nurse, and she wanted to have the dream to become a sister and eventually a matron. I spent 3 or 4 years in England, then came back to Nigeria. I would say I enjoyed England. We had a very kind foster mother who looked after us. And there were incidents of racism, but one wasn't really aware that it was racism. There were certain people who didn't seem to like you, but because your foster mother was also white, you didn't connect race with what was happening to you. Coming back to Nigeria at that age was great fun. I enjoyed it. And it was very warm. There were lots of mango trees. It was all very exciting to be back home. And I enjoyed Corona School very much. I think that it was a very good education. I was a rather shy young student. It's called bookworm at the time. And leaving Corona School to King's College was a very, very big step for me. King's College shaped me considerably. So I was in boarding school. We had the benefit of having students from all over Nigeria, being in a very inclusive, ethnically and religiously and regionally inclusive school was excellent for me. And I think it made me very much a Nigeria. King's College had very high academic standards, and it was drilled into you that you must be successful and that you must behave in a certain way. And I give to King's College the sense of discipline, the sense of confidence, the sense of excellence, the drive for excellence very much was from King's College. I had the luck and privilege of going to an international school called United World Colleges. I think that was a very different school from King's College. Yes, it was also schools were very driven, but it was a school that focused very much on international understanding, whereas King's College was a very competitive school. This was a school that focused very much on cooperation and community, whereas King's College was a school that very much focused on individual excellence. All right. This was a school that very much was about the group, community, service. All right. And I praised that one for making me a more socially concerned person, right? Extended the King's College national ethos to one that was international. And the 2 years that I had there were 2 very, very good years. After that, I went to Oxford University. Oxford University was much less international than United World College. and it was very much English at the time. Most of the leading universities in England and America have, over the last 40 years, become far more international than they were when we were there in the early 70s. And I think they have become much better for that. What Oxford gave me and the study of philosophy and politics was that I think it made me a very intellectually rigorous person, learning how to reason precisely, and learning how to think through things. It was wonderful being there because I got to meet a lot of other African students. I got to meet a lot of American students there, and I had the great satisfaction, the great enjoyment of having some of my King's College friends who were there, and then some of my friends from the United World College were also there. So it meant that on the one hand, you were in a new place. In another hand, you had some features, some old friends who were back with you, at the place. Going to Oxford in 1973 was wonderful because it was a time at which the oil producing countries were at the forefront. They were just making their mark on the world stage, and there were incredible hopes for Nigeria. Civil War was over, and there was a sense that Nigeria was going to be the world's first black power. So studying at that time was very, very, very exciting. And I think that one of my disappointments is that sort of sense that we were going to build an incredible nation, which we had in the 1970s, the sense that we didn't realize that remains a disappointment that has remained with me for a lot of my life.
Next step was going to Harvard Business School for your MBA. What was that like compared to your experience? You were one of the only African in your class, and then
Yes.
one of the only Africans in the first and second years combined. So what was that like compared to your experience in Oxford, where you had some familiar faces, now not so many of those?
Enjoyed Oxford much more. There's no doubt about that. Much, much more. I should mention that after I left Oxford, I went to Cambridge to do law. I enjoyed Cambridge. Again, it had a lot of African students who were there. Law was interesting. I didn't find studying law as interesting as studying philosophy and politics, but I thought that I gained a lot from understanding the legal approach to things, from gaining a profession. Now, America was different. I found America, it was exciting to be in America, having been in England for 7 years. America was new, and America has this can-do spirit. America has this sense of possibilities, and that there's something that is beyond you. So I enjoyed that part of America. But on the other hand, at the time, it wasn't as cosmopolitan or as international as England was. So I felt a little bit of an outsider. And I think the racial issues in America are much sharper than in England. So I became very conscious of the fact that one was part of an African or African American minority there and the way in which African Americans were being treated at the time. But I would say that I'm happy I went there and I learned a lot from Harvard Business School, a lot that helped me working at the government of Nigeria and also working in business. Intellectually, it was not exciting, I would say, but in terms of understanding marketing, understanding finance, understanding how organizations are set up, these were all very helpful, practical, useful lessons that have kept with me for the rest of my life.
On this topic of blending into society, being from another country and having so many global experiences. Because after Harvard, a very popular story about how you had 47 out of 50
Yes, yes.
rejections. Yeah, that's almost a folk tale now. You also had a summer internship in one of the big consulting firms.
Yeah.
Sat down and you went after school to work in public service in Nigeria. So that's a very stark difference from what a lot of people would do. What motivated that? And also, would you do so today still if you're in that position?
It's important to understand that 1980, when I finished university, returning to Nigeria was first choice. There were many opportunities. You were well paid. You had the feeling that you were getting in there early and that there was this oil economy that was just developing. And so you didn't have this feeling that you were going back as a sacrifice, to be honest with you. Not at all. You were going back happily. In fact, if anything, I felt that I was going back late because my Oxford friends, they had gone back in 1976 and they were besieging me. I'll be getting these letters from home about how so and so has just bought a new car, so and so has just moved into a new flat, so and so has just been promoted. And I must say that for a while I did wonder to myself, what am I still doing, on my third degree abroad? Shouldn't I be going home soon? So honestly and sincerely speaking, it wasn't that difficult a decision to go home because home at that time was going home to a very economically successful economy, no doubt about that, which was also going democratic at the same time. And then the second thing was that I had a very exciting job. I mean, to go back to your country and then get a job to work in the office of the president of the country, it's an incredible opportunity that very, very few people have. And I think that I owe that to my father, to luck. And here I was, very interested in oil and gas. I developed that interest over the last few years, and managing to get a job as special assistant on oil and gas. It was an incredible opportunity. So I didn't think twice. I was the lowest paid person in my class at business school, but when I looked upon it, that was for a short period of time, and that it would pay off in the long run.
It might be a difficult question, but if you were advising someone,
Answer that question.
would
If I'm advising somebody, what would I do? It would be more complicated now because it depends on several things. Okay, in my time, there was no issue of foreigners getting loans to go to business school.
Mm.
All right. Today, you can be a foreigner, a Nigerian, an African, and you can borrow money to go to business school. So when you finish business school, you have to take into account, do you have loans to pay back? That's number one. Number two, there's a difference between the exchange rate between the dollar and the naira today and what it was like then. Today it's 1,500 to 1. Then I think it was almost 1 to 1. You have to take that into account. For me, I would say to you that probably I may have stayed on, worked for a few years, then looked to see what the opportunities were at home. I'm more likely to have done that. But the advice I give everybody these days is that, look, when you finish business school, apply for jobs in Nigeria, apply for jobs in the African continent, apply for jobs in the United States, and also apply for jobs in London and Dubai. Then it means that you're going to spend a lot of time chasing opportunities, but chase all of them and then look at the, the offers you get. Depending on the offers you get, then take a decision. Don't make up your mind. Do I go home? Do I stay in America? Don't make that decision before you see the offers that are on the table.
Right. That's very true. And it's a lot because people would reflexively, especially people in your generation, would reflexively, but in Nigeria, why don't you want to?
Yes,
So
yes,
that you also have that
yes,
sense of understanding.
yes. And the other thing I also feel is that I think that your generation is very lucky in the sense that you're the generation of people who, in your lifetime, you can live in three different parts of the world.
Yeah.
You're a generation that can leave business school at 28. You can spend 10 years in America. You may then spend 10 years in Nigeria. You may then spend 10 years in London or Dubai. That's your generation. More and more of your generation will be like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, 15 years abroad, then she came home to Nigeria for X number of years, or it could be like many who are back in Nigeria 10, 15 years, and then are invited to take a job in Nairobi or in London or the United States and move to the States for 10 years. So I think that your generation has many more options, and therefore you shouldn't think about the decision, staying on in America, going home as a final decision. It's simply a step that you are taking in what will be an international life.
Just to go back to your own personal story for now, one thing that I noticed that it's not spoken about a lot, that the point that you were in public service in Nigeria also coincides with a coup that happened, or two actually.
I was extremely privileged to work for a man called Yahaya Diko, was the special advisor to the president on petroleum and energy. He was a superb individual, a highly intelligent man, very honest person, and I learned a lot from him. And I feel I made a contribution to the development of Nigerian oil policy and the development of LNG during my 4 years there. It is a shock to you finish drafting the budget speech for the president, you say goodbye to your to your boss, you take your girlfriend and and you're going on your first real holiday to Abidjan, and you leave at about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. You arrive there 7, 8. You get up the next morning and you are informed, and it's on the news that there's been a coup d'etat in your country and that everybody that you know has been arrested. And then you realize that had you spent one night longer, you would have been arrested yourself as well. And all of those people who were arrested were in jail for 1.5 years. So I, I, I always thank my luck or destiny, God, that I escaped luckily, and that was a big shock. I came back because I was very lucky that the new government reappointed me to my job. So I was one of just 2 people who were reappointed to our jobs out of the 500 political appointees. And then 20 months later, there was another coup. This time, the second coup released all the people that were jailed in the first coup, and was the President Babangida at the time was a person was well known to my family and was in many ways a more humane person than Buhari, who did the first coup. And it was after the second coup that I got married and then took the decision that I was then going to go into the private sector, because while in the government, I had seen certain opportunities and I was keen to try and take up those opportunities.
Yes, so that's a great segue to the next question, which was 1986 when you started your consulting firm in energy, and that was wildly successful. After that, started KMC Financial. You've spoken about that and you called it a complete and totally deserved failure. But at the same time, you called it one of the best things that's ever happened to you. So what happened there? How could it have been both things at the same time?
I think it was both things at the same time, because I think that you do very well in a certain area and then you begin to have this illusion that because you have done very well in something, it means you can do well in anything. And you often don't take into account that different professions, different jobs have different requirements. That's one. Two, you underestimate the role that luck plays, because you've got to work very hard, you've got to be very focused, but at the same time, Mother Luck has to smile on you as well. And it happens sometimes that you work very, very hard, luck doesn't smile on you. Sometimes you work almost as hard, but luck smiles upon you. In that KMC venture, I made a lot of mistakes, but I always say it was a good thing it happened to me, because I believe that there's certain things you do in life. The hard lesson of failure is often a better teacher than understanding it intellectually. You know what I mean? It's one thing to understand, I made this mistake, I should have done this. But it's another thing when you are slapped. You know what I mean? You fall to the ground, you are in pain, you have lost money.
You can't deny it. You can't. You have to face it. Yeah.
Exactly. So in that regard, that's why I say it was a good thing it happened to. And I think that sometimes failure makes you even more determined to prove a point. And I think that that is why I put so much energy into my next venture, FSDH. And I don't think I would have done FSDH with as much determination to prove a point that I can be successful outside of petroleum and I can do something in a completely new area and do it well.
This is something a lot of people want to hear about. In 1994, where you staged what's known as the first hostile takeover of a major bank, UBA, and there's so much surrounding that. I mean, there's a rumor that you were once locked out of the office.
True.
There's so much.
The rumor, the unions and the management took over the head office building, and they locked us out for an entire week, actually. All right. And what had happened was that we got into the bank, a group of myself and a group of younger people, and we saw many things that were not right in the bank. But I think that we handled the process of change incorrectly. We could see that the bank was overstaffed, without a shadow of a doubt, and that almost all the money, all the revenues were going into paying salaries. So there was very little money for things like capital investments, like computerization, and so on and so forth. It was also obvious that that there were lots of people in the bank that, so let's just say, there was a problem with skills. We didn't have a lot of people who had the skills for modern management. Now, I think that we didn't handle how you go about telling people you need to downsize. And I think we're very naive. And so, of course, once people heard that we're going to downsize and their jobs are going to be at risk, naturally, they just took over the building and said, over their dead bodies, is this going to happen?
How do you even organize or kind of pull the capital together? How do you even envision that you can do that? Because it's not something that a lot of people at that age and at that time would even think of, oh, I could do this with other people.
I must say that as I look back then, first of all, we assume one, we bought the bank, we won the election at the AGM, therefore we're in charge. That was our assumption, and that people are going to obey orders. But then we realize there's a difference between being in office and being in power. They're two different things. As far as these people were concerned, they had seen boards come and go. The previous boards were all appointed by the government. So as far as they were concerned, it's just a temporary group of people and who, in their view, were very young people. They used to call me the Cerelac chairman because of my age,
Yeah.
who was overrated. And just because he went to Harvard Business, who does he think he is? And so they taught me a lesson. Now, again, it was a big setback. But again, I think I learned that I had made some mistakes. And that was that not all the people who I met there who had been in the bank for many years, I should have taken some of them, okay, to join me in the reform effort. And they would have advised me best how to go about it. And I think that they're taking control of the building and in a sense, knocking me to the ground was good for me because we ended up 1 year later effecting the changes we needed, but we then did it working in conjunction with some of the members of staff who had been there for 20, 30 years, who I managed to bring to my side. I managed to explain to them why staff reductions, it wasn't an act of wickedness on my part. It was something that we needed to do in order to save the banks.
I think that's one thing that keeps a theme that keeps reappearing across your life, like extreme success, but usually preceded extreme failure.
Yes, yes.
What do you think about the relationship between failure and success? Like, how should people, especially young people, think about it in general? What's your philosophy about it?
You see, there are two things I would say about that. The one is that there are different personality types. And I think that I'm a person who psychologically doesn't like to play safe. My personality is such that I will attempt something that is very difficult because it's challenging, partly because it's exciting. And I think that once you are a person and you choose to be an entrepreneur or you choose to attempt something that hasn't been done before, there's a high degree of chance that you're going to fail. And my philosophy is very much let it be. I will sort out that problem when I fail and I will get there eventually. That's very much my philosophy. And I believe that for people who really want to achieve unusual success, you must risk failure. I don't see any other way. If you talk to all people who have been in that situation, they will all tell you that they had their midnight hours when everything looked bleak and that they had to make adjustments, they had to make changes in their strategy until they eventually got there. So therefore, my own message to a lot of young people is that life is never going to be a series of successes. It's going to be some failures, some successes, some failures, some successes, and understand that is the natural rhythm of life. And if you look at anybody, he or she has those failures. If you can't see them, it's that they are hiding them, just stop being mentioned, but they are there for sure. And there's a saying that if setback or if failure doesn't destroy you, it strengthens you. And it's very difficult to be destroyed in life. You can be defeated, it's very difficult to be destroyed. And then what happens so far you don't lose your confidence in yourself, you come out of it strengthened. And then for the rest of your life, you are less afraid because you can draw upon the stories of the past. You can always remember, let me not worry. Remember the last time this happened to me and I was worried? I
Right?
got through it. This one will not defeat me. That is your spirit.
Yes, that's so. Those are words to live by. It's always different hearing it versus living it. But
No. When you're in the middle of it and somebody tells you it is good for you, you feel like tapping the person.
one of the first times I knew about you was just hearing so many stories of young and young, just young people in general who are founders, and you've been such a great mentor and advisor to them in different ways in the philanthropic areas as well. You and your family, you give a lot to African funds and endowments. What's your philosophy behind those kind of disparate looking areas, startups and philanthropy?
I'll put them into two elements of it. The support for young people and the support for universities and the support for schools like ALA comes out of remembering my own life's experiences and remembering the teachers who have, at critical stages in my life, either given me advice or given me support or given me encouragement. And I have the sense that without that support and encouragement, I would not have been able to turn a certain corner. And I remember the support that a certain individual gave me, or it may be a certain individual who, in speaking to you, has made you realize that what you think is an obstacle in front of you is not an obstacle. It's just a hurdle. And you just need to go over the hurdle and you will get there. And remembering how that has affected me makes me want to give the same to others as well. So a lot of the mentoring and a lot of the philanthropy for schools is because I've seen that role in my own life. So I just want others to have that benefit. So that's one. Now, the other ones to do with startups, I think startups are fun. And I enjoy this sense of this small group of people getting together. You have an idea, everybody thinks it's crazy. You yourself think you're half crazy, and you go into it and you want to make it succeed. So I find startups fun. I look back at myself, I'm much more a startup slash crisis leader. I'm not very good in areas in a business that is doing well. I find that I easily get bored. And I think that there's some people who are very good at taking over something that is succeeded. It just needs to be taken to another level, or it needs to be refined, it needs to be redeveloped. There's some people who are very good at that, but may not be good at startups. So, and there's some people who are good at startups, they're not good at a crisis. So my love for startups, I think it just reflects my personality.
Right. Well, you've been very helpful to so many people, even people you may not directly know. So thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, and just going back to something that we talked about earlier that I really want to dive deeper into, it's just the difference across generations, specifically across African generations. At the time you were living, it was the obvious decision to go back. And now that's definitely the opposite. What do you think of that difference? And what do you think is the future of the African diaspora as a whole?
My thinking on this has evolved. There was a time at which I felt that patriotism was to go back and build up your own country. That was the root of patriotism. And there was a time in which I felt that I was not very understanding of people who wanted others to make Nigeria or Ghana or Kenya an inviting, sustaining environment for them to return to. There was almost something arrogant to me. That is that you're talking like a foreign investor. You're a national, and you're saying the place should be prepared for you to return to. I went through that phase. I'm now more different in my view. My view is there is a lot that can be done while in America, while in England, while in China, while in Paris, which can be of great benefit to the continent of Africa. And when you consider that the amount of money that people send back to Nigeria in the last 6 to 9 months has probably exceeded what we've earned from oil and gas, the Nigerian diaspora is doing an incredible job. And I'm immensely proud of what they're doing. I also feel, therefore, that you can be in the diaspora, and by the example of excellence that you provide, that is something that is worthwhile. My view is different now. It's that, yes, I think that some should go back and be part and parcel of nation building. But I think it's all right for those people who don't want to go back or can't go back for many reasons. The platform is not there. The opportunities are not there. And it's important to say that in my own case, look, I had a bit of a safety net in that if things went horribly wrong, I knew that I could go to the old man, my dad, and ask for 1 or 2 years rent at least to tide me over while I was working out what to do next. You can't expect that for somebody who's not in that situation to be able to do that. And then also, I mean, here I am. I'm right now back at Harvard Business School. I'm teaching. I have maybe 70, 80 African students who are either in the first or the second year here. I feel very much that I'm part of the development of their own stories. And I think I'm making a contribution by teaching them and others as well. And therefore, I think that in a very globalized world, as we are right now, you can do a lot for your community in many different parts of the world.
And like you said before, it doesn't have to be a final decision.
Exactly. So there's no need to make people feel guilty that they're selling out, they're jack buying, etc., etc., etc. No.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. On that note,
Mm.
to you, what does the American dream mean?
there have been two elements of the dream. The one element is the dream of rags to riches. I think that that story is not as easy now as it was maybe 50 years ago or 100 years ago. I think very much that America is becoming an increasingly unequal society in which the possibility of rags to riches stories are not as easy as they were 50 or 100 years ago. They're still there, and it's still one of America's strengths, but it's not as easy as it was before. So that's one thing. The second element of the American dream is not necessarily the rags to riches story, but just the story of infinite possibilities, of there being no ceiling, no cap to what can be achieved. And I think that that remains. And I have to say that I'm immensely proud over the last 20 to 30 years, the Nigerian and the Ghanaian and the African community in the United States, our image has shifted from fraudsters, from 419 experts, from dishonest people, and now people talk about the successful African professionals, the successful Nigerian doctors, the successful Nigerian African journalists, lawyers, people in the IT sector, and at the other levels, whether it's the nurses, lab attendants, the truck drivers, and those in the armed forces of the United States. And I'm immensely proud of that because I think that they do show that American dream of infinite possibilities is still there and it's still possible.
Okay. Final question. You turned 70 this year.
I did.
Yes. And so what do you, when you think about your life, and as we've talked about a lot of the milestones in your life, what do you want to be your legacy, or what do you think of as your legacy?
That's a tough one, It changes, I think that there was a time at which I wanted to be remembered as someone who had done very well in the oil and gas industry, someone who was a very good government official, was honest, who did his best. And there was a time that these were my legacy, the person who turned around a bankrupt bank and did it with Nigerians from different ethnic groups, men and women, different religions. And I really wanted that to be how I was going to be remembered. Increasingly, as I'm getting older, I find myself thinking more and more in terms of wanting my legacy to be one of more example to another generation of Africans who did his best to be a mentor. Maybe that reflects the fact that I'm in a university now and made Africans feel that they can achieve more than they ever dreamt of doing. So they're not so much looking at what has Hakeem Belo-Osagie done in his life, but I've left them feeling empowered, feeling that there are no limits to what they achieve, and feeling that they can do extraordinarily well themselves, and feeling that they can do far better than I've done or far better than any other member of my generation has done, and wanting to be remembered as somebody who made them feel that way.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. And above all else, I'd like to thank you for your persistence, your determination, your research work, and your very tough questions. But to say that I've also enjoyed it as well. And I really look forward to reading about you and hearing lots about you. And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much for watching. I really, really hope you found that helpful and inspiring. Don't forget to check out the links below. Like, subscribe, share with anyone else you think would find this helpful. And yeah, see you in the next episode. Bye.